Hi everybody, today we're going to talk about futures. Exciting. So what is a future? So a future is very similar to a forward contract, which we went over 2 lectures ago. So reminder what a forward contract is. At time equals 0, you make an agreement with someone else, the counterparty, that for an asset which has current price S0, you're going to purchase the asset at time equals t at price F0. So this is a price decided in the beginning. So we set this price. You're going to purchase this. You're going to have the obligation to purchase this at this price. And then you're going to immediately sell it at the market price, which is ST. And if the asset has gone up in price, then you make money. And if the asset has gone down in price, at least relative to this F0, then you lose money. So this F0 will obviously be a little bit bigger than S0 because of interest rates. It would if it weren't, then it would probably be wiser just to take your money and put it into a risk-free investment that gives you the interest rate. Anyway, I'm going slightly off topic. So what is a futures contract? So a futures contract is very similar, except now instead of the buyer of the contract communicating directly with the seller of the contract, so here I'm going to write B and S, they're going to communicate with an intermediary, which is the exchange. Buyer, and then we have the building, which will represent the exchange, and then we have the seller. So what is the point of getting this counterparty mixed in? So let me talk about what exactly are possible problems with forward contracts. So problems. So number one, what if you can't find a seller? What if you can't find a seller? Because it seems strange, right? Maybe you want to enter into this position over this asset. It's hard to find somebody who's willing to sort of go into this contract and allow you to buy it later at a certain price, whatever. So the point of an exchange is to facilitate these things. Okay. Number two, what if someone defaults? So either the buyer or the seller could default. In this case, if the forward contract is very informal, it's sort of hard to chase somebody down. You want to make sure that you still get your money back, right? The last problem is that these forward contracts are very sort of inflexible. So what I mean by that is contract inflexible. So let's say you enter into a forward contract at t equals 0. Well, this has a certain price F0 associated with it, right? T equals T. So you entered into this forward contract of F0 expiring at T equals T. It has a certain initial price. So, and then somebody else might enter at time equals 1, but the stock price has changed. The price of the underlying S1 is different from S0. So now they have to enter into a slightly different forward contract. So now you have a bunch of these sort of incompatible forward contracts, and they're not easily tradable because they all have like a different initial price. So this one, it's sort of hard to sell these, is what I'm trying to say. So this one will have the money that you get at the end will be ST minus F1, and then this one will be ST minus F0. So all of these will be sort of slightly different. Like, what if the stock jumped up like crazy at t equals 1? So then this will be, it'll be different because F1 will now be a bigger value, and so it's just sort of confusing dealing with all these different types of contracts with different prices. Okay, so again, how does having an exchange solve all three of these problems? Well, number one, I guess exchange, it facilitates sort of finding the buyer and the seller, right? It sort of standardizes it. Let me get to other points to show how it standardizes it. Number two, how does it help default? So when a buyer enters into a futures contract with an exchange, they have to deposit some money into their margin account, which is a special account. So what happens in a futures contract between t equals 0 and t equals 1 is a buyer, like if the price of the future that you're holding goes up, you have to pay some amount of money to make sure. It's basically, instead of waiting at the end to cash out all the difference between ST minus F, you're going to minus F0, you're going to cash it out period by period. So you entered into a future at entering into the future again costs nothing, but this does have some value. So suppose then that so this is sort of confusing. So we can look at, let's just say we have the future with price F0. Okay, so what is this? This is, we agreed upon the price F0, and at time equals t, I'm going to buy the asset at F0 and sell it at ST and make this amount of money, right? Suppose at t equals 1, the price of the asset goes up to S1. Now we can look now at the future, the futures contract that expires at the same time t equals t, but now with an initial price S1, right? So let me write that. So I guess future, it also expires at t equals t with the initial price S1. And this will be slightly different from the value of the futures contract up here, because maybe S1 has gone up in value. So what's going to happen is your contract, this one, from F0 is going to turn into a contract at F1, and you're going to get credited the difference. Like, let's just say the stock price jumped up like 20%. So here you bought the futures contract at, let's say, $110, and then the stock price jumped up. So now your futures contract is worth more, right? Because the stock price jumped up. So we're going to sort of like roll over that futures contract into one, like we're going to pretend instead that you bought it at t equals 1, and then we're going to credit you the difference. So if the stock price went up and now your futures contract is worth 121, we're going to pay $11 into your margin account. Okay. So this margin account is supposed to represent sort of the differences. I know it's sort of confusing. Hopefully that sort of makes sense. And if the futures contract, the value of it goes down, then you have to pay. And so you have to maintain the value of this margin account at around 10 to 20% of the actual underlying ST. Okay. So by having a margin account, this makes sure that whoever is both the buyer and the seller are able to, it sort of mitigates risk, so that they have to have money in there to deal with the changes, right? And if they don't have money, then the exchange will sort of take away their ability to have this futures contract. So by having money in there, you allow so the idea is, like, over time this futures contract is going to eventually so the value of the futures contract is going to eventually get to 0, right? So the value of futures contract that's very close to the expiry date is sort of that it has, it's very close to ST minus F. I mean, if this T is very close to T, it's very close, then this, and at time 0, this will be 0, like in this sort of futures contract that we've developed. Or not 0, but it'll be almost 0, because basically your futures contract today is transforming into tomorrow's futures contract with the difference credited to your margin account. Hopefully that makes sense. Yeah. So how does having a margin account help against defaults? Well, whenever the stock price goes up and down, whoever lost has to pay into the margin account to the other person. So, and if they can't pay, then they exit out. So this sort of promises the person who just profited that they're actually going to get money from this agreement. and they're getting money continually. Okay. Finally, what did I write here? Yeah. So finally, this is flexible, right? If your if your futures contract turns into tomorrow's future contract, then you can easily sort of standardize it. Because tomorrow, like your futures contract today, if it turns into tomorrow's future contract, then somebody else who's buying a futures contract tomorrow will have the same type of futures contract as you. So this sort of helps. So standardize. Okay. So what are some downsides of futures contracts? Number one, it's possible that they might be more limited. The option, so if you make an informal agreement, you can make all sorts of informal agreements. But if you go through an exchange, I guess the exchange only has a certain number of underlying assets that maybe they offer. So there are fewer options. Okay. I guess the other thing is that the payoff that you can get from this futures contract is it's linear in terms of the underlying asset. So if the underlying asset increases by a factor of 2, then the profit you get from it also increases, not by a factor of 2, but close enough. So the payoff is not multiplicative, which is either a good thing or a bad thing. Finally, it's also, since a futures contract, like let's just say this would be crazy if it happened, but if the price of the asset suddenly drops to 0, right, then you literally lose all your money. But all you have to put in originally is just your the margin. So it allows you to be very risky because you can enter into a huge amount of futures contract, and your margin account is only 10 to 20% of the actual stock price. So you can enter into 10 times the amount that if you just buy the stock, right? So it gives you more volatility, more risk. It gives you more, what is the right term for it? It's like exposure, so market exposure. So that's either good or bad. Okay. So finally, I wanted to talk about something called basis risk. Okay. So what is basis risk? So when you enter into a future, again, one reason for why you might do this is to hedge against possible price changes. So what you're doing is you're fixing this F0, and you're saying, okay, I'm allowed to buy the asset or the underlying asset at F0. So I'm fixing this price. So this is great if the asset that you're buying is directly the one that you want, and it's also like if you want to buy the asset at that price. What if you want to buy, a future, like let's say it's for 1,000 units of that asset, but you want to buy 900, or it doesn't divide equally. So, or for example, what if your future expires at a time in the future, not at the exact time that you need the asset? So you basically haven't locked. Like ideally, you would lock in the price. Okay, this exact time period, I know I'm going to have this amount of money, and I'm going to purchase the asset at F0, the decided upon price. But maybe the only futures contract is available for later. So basically, what this is meant to say that what if this ST minus F0, I guess T would be not the expiration, but the time that you actually need the money. What if this is not guaranteed to be 0? Another thing that might happen is the futures contract for that asset might be unavailable. So the best thing you can do is buy something that's sort of related. So for example, suppose you are interested in locking in a price for soybeans, but the only futures contract that is available is the futures contract for red beans. So this, you obviously maybe you expect the red beans and the soybeans to be slightly correlated, the prices of those, but you're not 100% sure. So that might be a problem, right? And maybe you can buy these red bean futures, and since they're correlated, it'll help mitigate the risk a little bit, but not entirely, right? Because there's still some uncorrelation there, right? Okay, so let's go over that example. Suppose you're buying, suppose you're interested in the price of this PT. Okay, so this is your price of red beans at time t. But the only thing you can buy is a soybean contract. This is the example given in the slides. ST. Okay, so at time t equals t, the price of your contract is ST minus minus F0. Okay, so you've bought Y number of these contracts. So again, Y is the number of contracts of soybean contracts you've bought. Okay, and so then you're immediately going to take that money, and so this will be the cash flow at time t. You will immediately spend it on red beans. So I guess Y will be, this might be like a fractional amount. So how many are you buying per red bean sort of quantity? Okay, the number of contracts. Okay, so this isn't perfect. So this is not equal to 0 because this ST and PT, they're sort of related, but they're not exactly equal to PT. Like there's no way that this Y times ST is any sort of multiple of PT. So there's no way for you to perfectly hedge this situation. Again, this is the sort of way to calculate the final amount that you're getting. But again, you're getting these amounts deposited into your margin account little by little because it's a futures contract. Okay, so I think then, what if you wanted to minimize the variance of this thing here in order to have the least possible risk? I think that's what's talked about in the slides. So then you would take the variance of this, and the variance of two things added together is the variance of one plus the variance of other plus the 2 times the covariance of them both. So we can write that variance of PT plus, and then we take the y squared out of here, variance of ST plus 2y covariance of ST and PT. Okay. So now, in order to, what we're interested in is minimizing the variance with respect to the number of contracts we buy. So we take the variance and we differentiate it with respect to y, okay? And we get, so this goes away because there's no y in front of it. We get 2y variance ST plus 2 covariance ST PT. Again, we want to minimize the change in the variance. So we want this to be as unvariable as possible. So we set this to 0. And then we solve for y. So we get y is negative covariance ST PT divided by variance of ST. So if these aren't related at all, then this is 0, right? And the whole thing is 0. So why would you buy soybean contracts if the variance between the soybeans and red beans is 0, right? Between the underlying assets. But if there is some variance, then hopefully you can purchase at least some amount that it makes sense to minimize the possible variance in the cash flow. Okay, hopefully that helps. I know this is sort of complicated topic. Thank you very much. See you next time.